Good morning, I'm Margaret Bissett for Eye on New Hampshire. Thank you for joining us on this Sunday. I am joined this morning by John Cini from Recovery International, which is a group that focuses on helping people recover from depression, anxiety, and other emotional problems with a cognitive behavioral method that we're going to talk a little bit more about in a couple of minutes. It's a nonprofit group that has ties here in New Hampshire. Good morning, and thank you for joining me.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Tell me a little bit about how Recovery International was started.
Well, it has long, deep roots that go all the way back to like 1937, and it was developed by Dr. Abraham Lowe, who unfortunately has passed away. But he was he was the architect of a method whereby people who had a variety of psychiatric issues, some of them minor, some of them major, some of them that had required hospitalization. He developed a series of techniques that they could practice in a group. And that launched the very first group recovery that's ever been done ever. And so he had an efficiency in that he could treat a group of people and everybody else was treating one-on-one. And he gave the people that were in the group tools that enabled them to self-train and use self-discipline and their own willpower to begin to control feelings that they did not enjoy, feelings that could lead to greater symptoms and in some cases lead back to taking them back to a hospital. And it was so effective that it just continued to go and go and go. So today in New Hampshire, we have two Recovery International meetings. One's in Manchester and one's down in Londonderry. That's a new meeting. And I'm the group leader for the one in Londonderry. But I attend both each week, and I'm very impressed with the effectiveness of the method.
Now, John, this is a free group, so you don't require anyone to make any co-pays. This is not something that requires, any kind of funding for a person if they are dealing with any issues that they feel that they need help with. They can just come to this meeting.
That's correct. That's correct. Now, there is a requirement of time. We suggest that people come and attend 3 meetings before they actually share an example of something that they've gone through. But they're free to ask any questions, and at each meeting they'll typically have 3 demonstrations or practical examples where members of the group will share some kind of an event. Usually it's a trivial event, and it's structured in such a way that it's pretty easy for people to see how this method, how the process works. Some people seem to get it like after the very first meeting.
Yes.
But they recommend 3, and then you could come to a meeting and actually share an event as an example.
Mental health and mental health awareness, I believe, is a growing issue, not only here in New Hampshire, but nationwide. People are paying more attention to the fact that this is something that needs to be focused on more acutely than it has been in the past, because there are people that are walking around that are not getting treatment, and they're trying to deal with issues on their own when there are support groups like yours that could really help them.
I couldn't agree more. And there are a lot of attempts to deal with what really is rooted in mental health in ways that aren't very effective. A lot of people will self-medicate, for instance, with alcohol or drugs. And
which leads to greater issues.
Right.
Right. Yeah. And it's another stigma that they can't get help or they'll never recover, correct?
I believe that's also true.
It's a growing problem, and I think that people need to understand that there is help out there with professionals and volunteer groups like yours where they don't have to be alone.
That's a very big part of this. Just coming into a room and being with others that have very similar issues, and many of the people that are in the room are beginning to deal with them very effectively.
We're speaking with John Cini this morning on Eye on New Hampshire from Recovery International. He's a volunteer group leader that meets in Manchester and in Londonderry. John meets with a group in Londonderry at Roby House on Mammoth Road. And there is the Mental Health Center of Greater Manchester that hosts the Manchester group. I noticed the Manchester group meets on Mondays and the Londonderry group meets on Thursdays. They're from 7 to 9 p.m., both in the evening. And of course, you said anyone can show up at any time?
18 years of age or older. If they're younger than 18, they recommend that they come with a parent or a guardian.
Tell me a little bit more about the coping, the self-help method that you're advocating.
Well, a lot of it comes down to recognizing as quickly as possible when you don't feel right, when you don't feel normal, and then taking some specific action with that. So you have to make a business of your own mental health. There can be a tendency, if you don't do that, to sort of treat it as a game. And a game is sort of like a game of chance, 50-50, a flip of a coin. And this is more an intent to use your will so that when you recognize a bad feeling, that you do something about it, like right away. And doing this, one of the first big benefits of this is that it tends to detach the danger. One of the spots or slogans, if you will, that's used in this a lot is that the event, whatever you think you're responding to, it's a complication. It's not really an emergency. There's so much stress and tension that fills so many people's lives these days with, so many things they're trying to do, the multitasking, just so many things going on, so that when they start to feel upset, they can kind of take a small break and kind of regroup themselves and come to understand that they're just feeling symptoms of temper. Temper is sort of one of the key words in Recovery International. It's sort of the main thing that we try to pay attention to, our own temper. Sometimes it's the temper of others. Some people work in environments where there's temper that's being applied against them, like a bullying-like environment.
Right.
But to be aware of one's own temper and be able to recognize it and then do things about it to reduce the temper. And when the temper goes down, the symptoms essentially, they evaporate, they go away with, no drugs and nothing up either sleeve. It's not big magic. It's just pretty common sense behavioral. It's not therapy, it's behavioral training, cognitive behavioral training.
I was noticing what your program, I think one of the things that it's advocating or focusing on is that, as you mentioned a moment ago, you have the power to choose. And I think that is something that is not focused on as strongly as it should be lately, whether it's with our own kids, our own children, or with adults, that you take responsibility for your actions, but you also have the power to change your actions if you want to do so.
And your thoughts. And your thoughts usually drive how you feel. And it's like thinking can create a bad sensation. Thinking can move you from a bad sensation into a very good sensation. But we need to learn how to do it, and we need to learn to do it quickly so that a bad feeling doesn't turn into a bad hour or a bad day or a bad week, etc. The sooner it's applied, the better a person is. And I like this also because it's not hard. But what is a challenge is that you can come learn it. It might be a little like learning martial arts, and you learn a couple of moves and you say, hey, this is really good. But the trick is to use it when you're being attacked. And in these examples, usually we're almost attacking ourselves. It's ourselves that have created the thoughts that have generated these bad feelings. But then we, in the heat of battle, we have to be able to remind ourselves what's really going on and what can we do about it.
And what you can control and what you cannot control in some cases.
So true. Your outer environment is usually just left to be whatever it is with this method. And then we take responsibility for our inner selves. And that is our general paradigm, if you will.
Yes, and I think, we focus on kids with bullying, but we have to remember that there's bullying in adult atmospheres as well. And if some people haven't had training or someone to talk to about it, or again, if they're feeling more than the usual feelings of anxiety or helplessness, this is the kind of group that can help them deal and get those coping mechanisms.
Absolutely.
Not to mention, and we advocate too much, in my opinion, and perhaps you have an opinion on this. We go right to chemistry and trying to fix a problem with a pill. And I think there are many more cases now where people can get through their disorders, their mood disorders, their panic, their anxiety with these sort of methods instead.
Or at least they can have the experience of not feeling bad, but then they also have a dependence on big pharma, if you will.
Big pharmaceuticals or drugs, other drugs, alcohol, as you said before, whereas this is something that is teaching them to take control of themselves. They're taking charge of your own life and your own feelings and your emotions.
Right, and with that goes, I think, a very strong sense of identity and self, an elevated feeling of, hey, I'm really doing good here because I'm taking care of me, instead of relying on some external crutch, if you will. But we're very also very adamant about we're not doctors, and we don't recommend that anyone change their medication, give it up, or take more of it or anything like that. We're more of a supplement to whatever anyone is currently doing for their mental health. But quite a few people that come really aren't doing anything yet. And that makes this perhaps just that much more important, because now they can see, without any additional bias, they're able to try it, see its effectiveness, and judge for themselves.
We're talking with John Cini from Recovery International, and your website, recoveryinternational.org. If you want to learn more about this organization, there is literature, and it talks about their daily practices, their weekly meetings, symptoms. If you are not sure, as John mentioned, if you feel like you're just not feeling right, and you're looking for some guidance or for some help, you said that they can come to any meeting, anytime.
Absolutely.
Which takes place in both Manchester and in Londonderry once a week. Tell me about the size of the groups that are generally at these meetings. Does it vary?
It does. Some weeks we have as many as 20 or 25. Some weeks it's very small, maybe 4 or 5. It's usually sort of somewhere in that range. There are veterans like myself that are there every week. I get a lot out of this personally on a bunch of levels. I use the program for myself, but I get a real kick out of seeing people get this and then have that elated sensation of, wow, I'm getting some control in my life about the thing that's probably the most important to them in terms of, how you feel. How do you really feel?
Right.
So they can be honest with themselves, and in this environment, they're able to share with others the truth of how they felt. And I'm just a big advocate. I think it's a fantastic program. And the price is right.
If the price is right, it's free and open to anyone who feels that they would like to participate. Of course, you can take donations as well. If there was one thing that you could mention to someone out there that seems to be struggling but isn't sure which direction to take, what would you say to them personally right now, John?
Well, I would say that no matter what you feel, don't feel hopeless. Don't feel helpless. Just come to one of our meetings. Folks are more than welcome to give us a call and review, answer any questions they might have. My number is 785-2413, and they can text or call. But I would encourage that they come to a meeting and see this function firsthand. I think it's maybe a little monkey see, monkey do. It's like you could imagine, I think anyone can imagine themselves doing it after they see it, going through this 4-step process of how to deal with this. And they too would then pick it up and be very glad that they did.
Thank you, John. Recovery International is a free mental health support group. They meet in New Hampshire, both in Manchester on Monday nights from 7 to 9 p.m. at the Mental Health Center on Cypress Street in Manchester, and in Londonderry on Thursdays at the Roby House on Mammoth Road. You can contact the Manchester office at 624-0086 or the Roby House at 785-2413. I'm Margaret Bissett. You've been listening to Eye on New Hampshire. Have a wonderful Sunday.